Tudor recently discontinued the Heritage Chrono, which I always considered to be a hidden champion of the brand. And additionally, I think it didn't quite get the attention that it deserved. I'm Timo for Fratello, and this is the Tudor Heritage Chrono. Back in the 1970s, this watch was nicknamed the Big Block because of its large size, which was 40 millimeters, and it was to be considered a large diameter in the 1970s. It was also nicknamed the Monte Carlo because of its dial that loosely resembles the spinning wheel on the roulette tables in Monte Carlo. And last but not least, it was also nicknamed the home plate because the hour markers resemble the home plates that you can find on a baseball field. So in case you ever hear one of those three nicknames, now you know they all belong to the same watch, the Tudor Heritage Chrono, or the original, the Tudor Oyster Date Prince chronograph. But now let's look at the modern reinterpretation from 2010, the Tudor Heritage Chrono and its specs. The watch is 42 millimeters in diameter, it is slightly less than 30 millimeters thick, and it sports a reassuring 150 meters of water resistance. That's also thanks to its screw-down pushers. The watch is powered by an ETA 2892 movement, which is a basic three-hand movement with a date complication. And to get the chronograph functionality on top, there's a deux poids, deux bras chronograph module that basically sits on top of the watch. Fun fact, this deux poids, deux bras chronograph module is actually also used by Audemars Piguet in their early Royal Oak offshore line. However, AP used to have a Jaeger-LeCoultre base movement with a deux poids, deux bras chronograph on top. The watch comes in three dial variations. It's the black dial with gray subdials that we have here. Then there's a reverse configuration with a gray dial and black subdials. And additionally, there's the third variation, which is a blue dial, and it has also some slight variations compared to the other two. The watch comes on a stainless steel bracelet, which is very well made and comfortable, and has an equally well made stainless steel clasp, which is something that's always very important for me because if I don't like the bracelet, if I don't like the clasp, in the end, personally, I don't like the watch because for me it's a package deal. The watch also comes with a fabric strap in the box. It matches the color scheme of the dial. It's a nice strap, very well made, but because of the thickness of the watch and how the strap attaches to the lugs, I don't think the look is quite as nice as this on the stainless steel bracelet. Additionally, the stainless steel bracelet has female end links, which is for people with small wrists a very important bit to know, because it means the 50 millimeters lug to lug of the watch is true to size. If you can fit that on your wrist, you can wear the watch and it will look nicely. While the Heritage Chrono stays true to the design of the original from the 1970s, there are some slight differences that are worth highlighting. Personally, I think there are three main differences that you might find interesting. The first one is size. While the original from the 1970s was already nicknamed the Big Block with its 40 millimeter in diameter, the new one grew 2 millimeters in size to a total of 42 millimeters. Considering the thickness of the watch, however, I think the size is nice and well balanced and the watch sits nicely on the wrist, so that is not a deal breaker for me whatsoever. This comes down to personal preference and of course to your wrist size. The second difference can be found on the bezel. While the original had a fixed bezel with a tachymeter scale, the re-edition from 2010 has a rotating bezel with a 12-hour indicator on it. And that means you can use, on the new version, the bezel as a somewhat GMT-light functionality, and Tudor even mentions this in the handbook of the Heritage Chrono re-edition. Here, again, this comes down to personal preference. While I personally don't ever use the tachymeter scale I have on my chronographs, for example on the Speedmaster, I never found it useful. Of course, it stays more true to the racing history of those kinds of watches. On the other hand, a GMT light functionality, even if it's only a 12-hour indicator, is something that I actually use every now and then. So, for example, our copy editor, Brandon, he's in Japan, and I can use the bezel to track his time zone, which is quite handy every now and then. The third and most notable change is probably the magnifying glass. The original edition from the 1970s had a cyclops at 6 o'clock to magnify the date window, whereas the new one just got rid of that altogether. There's no magnifying glass at all. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of those cyclops or magnifying glasses on watches. Of course, if you have a Rolex Day-Date, I think it's iconic and it belongs to the watch, but other than that, not for me. Like I already mentioned earlier, Tudor discontinued this model early 2023, quite silently, just started to disappear from the website and from the shops. That means that I'm assuming prices are going to hike in the near future. So if you want to get one, if this watch interests you, head on over to Chrono24 or to a different platform and see if you can find one for reasonable prices. At the moment, the watch is going for, I think, between 3,000 and 4,500 euros, depending on the condition of the watch, and of course whether or not it's a full set with box and papers and so on. However, that is still quite far away from the prices the original watch from the 1970s fetches nowadays. If you're searching for a 7031 on Chrono24, for example, you will see prices that range from between 30,000 to even 67,000, 80,000 euros, depending on the condition. Personally, I consider this to be one of Tudor's best designs, because the original from the 1970s was already a clear differentiation from Rolex. You know, if you recall the past from Tudor, oftentimes they made watches that quite closely resembled the ones from Rolex, and it felt a bit like Tudor was just the entry-level brand if you couldn't get a Rolex, which, to be fair, was also the intention of the brand at the beginning. Nowadays though, and specifically with the Heritage Chrono, I think that differentiation is becoming stronger and stronger. Tudor has its own brand positioning, its own identity, and the Heritage Chrono for me is the one watch that really stands out because it's such a strong Tudor design. It's so unique. I have the watch on my wrist and I don't think, oh, I'd rather have a Rolex. No, I like this watch. I think it's perfect in size. Its quirkiness on the dial is amazing. There's nothing quite like it. It's very unique. You can identify it immediately if you see one in the wild. That's why I think it's Tudor's best design. So if you ask me, the Tudor Heritage Chrono is not the shield that protects the crown. Nope, it can stand all on its own and shines by itself. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit like, hit subscribe, and see you around for the next video.